Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing? Today is Tuesday, May 26th, and this is day 44, if you believe it or not, of our virtual learning initiative. Okay, but we only have 9 days remaining, so that's something good to know. And this video is from my crime and justice class. First, guys, hope you all had a tremendous Memorial Day weekend. Hope you got to spend some time with some family. Got to enjoy the weather, especially as we're starting to see some of the restrictions on meetings and gatherings being removed. And obviously, great news for seniors today, saying that the governor is allowing graduations to take place starting July 6th. So I know it's super late, probably a month after you guys expected it, but considering everything, it's better than nothing, and at least you guys get to at least have some closure finally to your 4 years here at North Hunterdon. So I'm very, very happy for you. This week, we're going to continue the O.J. Simpson case. Again, we're going to continue with the Netflix episodes, and pretty much what's going to happen is this week and next week it's just going to be OJ. It's going to be left with this assignment. And then next week I'm going to have one Zoom meeting for each class, just kind of as like a closure, say goodbye to you guys, wrap some things up, and then that will be it. That is it for our school year. So with that being said, let's kind of dive right in. First thing is hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the first 3 episodes of the O.J. Simpson case. It's tremendous. I really like watching it with the classes because I was a kid when this happened. Okay, so it was happening in like 1992 when he ran, right? 1992, 1994, something like that. So I was in grammar school. I actually had a sleepover that night. And so when I was a kid, we used to rent video game systems because I didn't have any. So we would go to the local like video rental store, not Blockbuster. We had this place called Video Val's, like right down the road. I ended up working there when I was in high school. But anyway, we rented a video game system. A bunch of my friends were over. We were hanging out, having a good time. And then all of a sudden, my parents heard about it on the news during dinner. And then my friends and I spent the remainder of the night watching that entire chase, if you will, if you want to call it that, during our sleepover. I remember we had to wait hours for pizza because everybody was ordering pizza. So the scene where they showed like the Domino's and the guys like we're out of cheese and out of sauce, that is not like made up. That's something that actually happened during that time. So that's pretty interesting stuff. You got to see a little bit about both sides of the prosecution and the defense, and you learn a little bit about the lawyers. And I try to kind of sum up everything and talk to you about that, as well as I gave you the PowerPoints. This week I gave you a new PowerPoint because we're going to start and we're going to look at the defense strategy. And we're going to specifically talk about juror selection, how important that is, what exactly happened during the Simpson case, and things like that. So if you don't want any of the future episodes to be spoiled, go ahead and pause this, and then you can kind of come back and look at it for some additional context to those episodes if you'd like. But if not, I'm just going to kind of talk about what the assignment will be, what episodes we would normally watch in class, what episodes we leave out and why, and kind of go from there. So I did give you guys the first 3 episodes. I normally skip episode 4. We skip episodes 4, episode 6, and episode 7. And the reason why is because they're not really material to the case. They're kind of like subplots and sub-stories. Episode 6 talks about Marcia Clark and her relationship with the press and the media and tabloids during the time. She was just pretty much, she was just like brutally abused for her looks, her appearance, everything like that. So much so that she actually got a makeover for court, and she showed up one day at court and everyone was like gawking at her and all this other stuff. And it seemed like after that, the press just kind of doubled down. So it talks about the reality of what she had to deal with outside of the courtroom, in addition to like her personal life. She was going through a divorce that was getting raked through the mud, and people were talking about that in the media. So it was not easy being Marcia Clark during this. So that's that episode. And then episode 8, which one was episode 8? Episode 8 talks about, I'm so sorry. There we go. Episode 8 talks about the jury specifically, okay? So in this, the jury gets what's called sequestered. And we have a sequestered jury. What that means is the jury is not allowed to have any type of outside contact with individuals outside of the jurors. They are put up in a hotel, and everything they read, see, is pretty much monitored 24/7. There are deputies on hand that are around 24/7. They control what you can watch, what you can read. Everything has to be pre-approved. You're pretty much in jail, and that's the episode. The episode's called Jury in Jail. And so at this point, we're a couple months in. The jury's starting to crack. It's kind of like probably how most of us are doing during quarantine, right? Like we're about 9 weeks in now, so some of us are starting to crack. We're kind of kind of over it, right? And it's the same kind of idea for the jury. So they start to crack. One of the jurors has like a nervous breakdown. They want to be excused, and this is where we're going to start seeing a lot of the major jury shuffling going on. By that I mean this: you're going to watch episodes 5, which is called the race card. Episode 7, which is pretty much about trying on the glove. Episode 9, which is the bombshell evidence that the defense finds late in the process. And then finally, episode 10, which is the verdict, right? So these are the last 4 episodes over the next 2 weeks that you're going to watch. We already know that the prosecution and the defense believe that jury selection is really important. In the PowerPoint I shared with you, it gives you some of the questions that jurors were asked, and it gives you some of the data about the jury. It lets you know how many men, how many women, the races of these individuals, what happens during the voir dire process. It's a really great insight into the process during the trial at the time. So pretty much what happens is this. I think at this point, hopefully we've talked enough about criminal cases that you understand that the jury who's there to judge you is almost as important as the lawyers that you hire. And you need to make sure you hire good lawyers to help you select a great jury, because they're the ones ultimately that decide your fate. And for the O.J. Simpson case, they asked questions of potential jurors and candidates to help build specific profiles of what type of jurors they wanted on the case. So you're going to see that the jury is mostly women. Now, if you were the prosecution, you like that idea. Well, why? O.J. Simpson had a history of domestic violence and domestic abuse. This is something that should sit well, or at least be relatable in terms for women, because of the fact that women typically are domestic violence abuse like victims. Therefore, they would sympathize more with the prosecution than they would with the defense because of his history. So these are like little snippets or ideas of things that both teams of lawyers are going to want to find out and try and control, because they're trying to make sure that their story, their narrative in court is well received. And so what happens with both sides is this. As you saw, I believe, when everyone met Barry Scheck and Alan Dershowitz when they first came out to LA, they all got to meet the private investigator that Robert Shapiro used. This is why it's important. His job was to dig up dirt on potential jurors that were an issue. As you watch these episodes, you're going to see they have a board with every juror's picture on it, and they have nicknames. They refer to one juror as the Demon. Okay, and I think I touched on that on my on the last video. But they're going to dig up dirt on jurors, and they're going to try and get jurors that they believe will challenge their verdict, though the verdict they want based on their narrative, removed from the case. This is going to happen throughout the entirety of the series, and it gets to the point where they have removed so many jurors, they've run out of alternates, and they're running the risk of having a mistrial. So both sides kind of have to come to this mutual agreement that they're not going to try and relieve or excuse any more jurors based on information that just so happens to pop up without any real kind of digging, right? And this is done on both sides. It's done on the prosecution and on the defense. So both sides are going to play that game. So that's why jury selection is really important. And, you know, as you watch this, you start to understand why they want certain jurors, right? You think of the social climate at the time, right? This is right after Rodney King. You now have O.J. Simpson is on the stand. Okay, O.J. Simpson is now being accused. He's a prominent African-American celebrity and athlete. Okay, so these are things that, you know, if you were part of the African-American community at the time, based on the social climate, you're going to be way more sympathetic towards O.J. Simpson based on things that you've seen or experienced yourself. Okay, I mean, there is no doubt, or there's no argument against the fact that the LAPD at the time and throughout its history to its core has had a history of racist members of their department. Okay, and I'm not saying that it's a police thing or an LAPD thing. I mean, look, there are people that have terrible viewpoints and are racist in all walks of life, right? And that's not what we're trying to talk here. We're just trying to talk about what the facts are of the case. Now, in the beginning of this class, I think I told everyone that when you look at O.J. Simpson from the O.J. Simpson case, from the lens that we can look at now, after the fact, with all the information, with a much better understanding of DNA evidence, okay, it's really, really difficult to see or find how he could have beaten these charges. I mean, guys, there's a literal trail of blood from his Bronco in the front door of his home up into his bedroom. However, based on the lawyering and the political and social climate of the time, after you're done watching this and you're learning about it, if you put yourself in the shoes of these jurors and the idea that, well, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that the whole defense of O.J. Simpson is that this consortium of racist police officers specifically framed O.J.? Like right now, hearing that sounds crazy. As you continue to watch these episodes and you learn a little bit more about it and you kind of get to kind of experience it and see it through the different lens, at the end, you're going to be like, or some of you will be like, wait a minute, now I kind of understand now, right? And it starts with episode 5. So episode 5 is called The Race Card. This is the crux of the O.J. Simpson defense, okay? They have tons of evidence they have to get rid of, okay? And at the time, because of the social climate, the relationship with the LAPD, all of this other stuff, okay, they decide that they are going to say that O.J. Simpson, because he was a prominent African-American male, okay, was being specifically targeted by the LAPD. All right, and that is pretty much what episode 5 talks about. It's the crux of the entire case. It talks about how Johnny Cochran gets involved, what his role is, why he is so important and pivotal in this case, and you really start to understand and get to see it. Johnny Cochran's charisma, his ability to connect with juries, he's present in the media constantly. He's a figurehead. He is a tremendous pick, and he's probably the all-star of the cast outside of maybe Barry Sheck and Alan Dershowitz, okay? So that's episode 5. Episode 7, the next one, episode 7 is a great one. It talks about the glove and the evidence, and it gives you some real basic kind of like lawyering 101, right? I do not have a law degree. I did not attend law school. I chose not to, but I will tell you this. One of the things that you always know is you never make your witness or you never have you never have the defendant kind of manipulate any type of evidence in front of court because you have zero control over that scenario. So at this time, the defense had found the gloves. They found the receipt that proves that Nicole actually purchased the gloves for O.J. Simpson. There was only X amount of pairs made that year, and they were purchased. They had the receipt, everything. Like they connected all the dots, and it was great. However, the defense, every time the prosecution is going to bring up a very, very valid point, the defense does a masterful job in distracting you from what is being said. And they do things to kind of draw attention away. And you'll see this. Specifically, you're going to see this between the relationship between Johnny Cochran and Christopher Darden. Cochran's kind of plays Darden a little bit. He appeals to his emotional state, and he pits him against an entire community of individuals and kind of makes his life miserable. But at the same time, he's got him, right? The littlest thing sets Darden off. So Darden wants to have OJ try on the glove. He believes, he knows that they're a fit. They have the receipts, everything, but he wants what he calls that aha moment, right? Like that made for TV moment, because guess what? O.J. Simpson was on television every single night. We talked about it every night in my household at dinner. It was a topic of discussion, whatever it might be. So that was Darden's idea. Marsha Clark says no. She gives Darden the exact reasons I told you. You never have a defendant demonstrate in front of the court because you have no control over the demonstration. But Darden is adamant about it. And without Marsha Clark's approval, he's actually going to have O.J. Simpson try on the glove in court. I'm not going to spoil it. I want you to watch it. It's tremendous. It's very accurate. We all saw it on television. It was all over the news. And this is where you get the phrase from Johnny Cochran, if the glove don't fit, you must acquit, right? And because O.J. Simpson had a very difficult time putting the glove on in front of everyone. And that is like your huge material piece of evidence. And now all of a sudden, you've just created a massive amount of doubt for the jury in front of everyone. So that's a really important episode. The next episode is episode 9, and this is it. This is the one that sealed the deal on the O.J. case. So Detective Mark Furman is the one who jumped the fence, knew where O.J. lived, and they all found the evidence that night with Detective Van Adder and I think Van Buren or whatever. And so these gentlemen, they find all of the evidence, and it just so happens that Mark Furman, who entered all of the evidence from the O.J. case, is a known racist. Okay, Furman actually gets in trouble for writing the letters KKK on a calendar in his precinct for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. He was censured for that. Okay, he got in trouble for that. And so they're going to make Christopher Darden be the one that deals with Mark Furman. Okay, and that is strategic. in itself, and I don't think I need to go into that any further. But what happens is that it turns out Mark Furman either had a romantic relationship or pursued a romantic relationship with a woman that he met one night at a bar. That woman just so happened to be a screenwriter, and she was trying to write a screenplay or a movie about the relationship between police and communities. And so she interviewed Mark Furman and produced a whole number of tapes in which Mark Furman is going to use the N-word in a exponential number of times. He gives specific instances where he talks about falsifying evidence, planting evidence, falsifying reports, lying, all of the stuff specifically to frame and get after African Americans. Once the defense finds out about this, they try to procure the tapes. They do everything they can because they want to play these tapes in court. Okay, and the reason why they do that is because it is the key to unlocking the race card defense. So when I say that, I mean this. Their entire defense is based around the idea that the LAPD conspired against O.J. Simpson because he was African American. They now just had hard evidence that says that the detective who found all of the evidence in the case just so happens to be admittedly and openly racist and is going to describe a scenario in which he and other police officers brutally attack African Americans without concern. And they talk about planting evidence and falsifying reports. It's really, really bad. It's unbelievably inflammatory. Viewer discretion is advised when you watch this episode. There's a number of the N-word is used multiple times. And so they needed to get these tapes to play them in court. They didn't get everything they wanted, but they got enough. And this is going to pretty much, between the glove and Detective Furman, it's going to seal it up. And then that brings us to the verdict, and you get to learn a little bit about the verdict. But we all know the verdict going into it. It's worth a watch. The important thing is what happens after, and this is what's crazy. The night that O.J. Simpson was released after his not guilty verdict, he hosted a huge party in his home where he was paid $450,000 from tabloids to come and to take pictures of individuals who were partying at O.J. Simpson, and he gives a speech, which, by the way, is the most awkward and cringeworthy speech you'll see, but it is interesting. And it turns out that O.J. realizes that it's a house full of people he doesn't even know, and his life is going to kind of change. It doesn't go back to the way it went prior to the allegations and the accusations and things like that. So that is it. That's the O.J. Simpson case. Okay. I hope you guys enjoy watching the Netflix series. If you have any questions about the case or anything like that, you can shoot me an email, or you can attend office hours. And that's pretty much it. Next week, I'm going to, again, have a Zoom for everybody just to kind of have some closure, say thank you for everything, and we'll talk to you guys soon. And that's it for me. Hope you guys have a great week. See you later.